What is up, YouTube? What is happening? Is addiction a disease? Is disease an addiction? Welcome. I'm Tom Kirkham, Big Island, Hawaii. Aloha, aloha. So I wanted to follow up on a video I made yesterday. I talked about the question, is addiction a disease? And I watched some of the video back. I noticed I was actually saying, is disease an addiction in places in the video? An interesting juxtaposition of words, because I think that topic was on my mind and I simply ran out of time in the video. Is disease an addiction? Is addiction a disease? It's interesting to play with those turnarounds, and I'll talk about why. And so I talked about the disease model of addiction and how that's a psychological, cultural, spiritual approach and physiological. And there is some evidence that there's physiological predispositions towards compulsive behavior, but compulsive behavior isn't really all of addiction. And the disease model has gained a lot of traction in how we treat addiction. The disease model being that you have a disease, which is addiction, and so you can't ever go near any substances whatsoever. And it reactivates the disease, which is the case for a lot of people. I mean, it's not true for everyone, and there's people that can moderate, and so I talked about why they might be making it black and white in self-help groups. They might present it that way to help the people for whom it is that way, and so I was saying, is disease an addiction, but also is addiction a disease, right? And there is still some disagreement on whether it actually is a disease, and so we talked some about that, about the heterogeneity, the word I couldn't say, the heterogeneous nature of recovery. It's different for everybody, right? And I don't want to pathologize people who have a chronic disease. I mean, I have dealt with a chronic disease myself, as you may know if you've watched my videos. And so, but my question that came up for me a little bit when I noticed that turn of phrase, is disease an addiction, was that, do we hold on to the patterns of our disease, quote unquote disease? And a lot of this depends how we think about disease too. In the West, we tend to think about disease, I mean, I say in the West, but in the industrial society, in the medical model, we tend to think about fixing a disease. A disease is something that you fix. This is actually in what you would call restorative medicine, right? We want you to restore me, please, doctor, back to the way that I was before this disease happened. Well, in reorganizational healing, we work to create a state of well-being within ourselves by the habits that we do. We're not trying to cure a disease. And how I think that applies to addiction, for example, to quitting smoking, is that what really got me to quit smoking and what I'm wanting to teach is that I began to go on a journey of creating holistic health in my life. And for me, smoking got kicked out of that journey. You know, I might still burn some sage or sit by a campfire, but I'm not going to, you know, inhale the smoke more than the incidental, you know, smoke that's there. I'm just not a smoker. I'm not going to smoke a joint. I'm not going to take a bong hit. I'm not going to smoke a cigarette. I'm not going to smoke a pipe. I will not do it, Sam. I do not like green eggs and ham. I changed into a non-smoker. And so I guess for me, the smoking was a dis-ease state. In other words, it was a problem. It was something that needed to end. If you don't have a compelling reason to quit smoking, I think it's going to be very difficult. If it doesn't really, it's not something that must happen in your life. You know that it must happen. You must quit smoking. And when the health implications of it hit you, it may become a must. And what I'm suggesting is that a transformation in holistic health and an orientation towards holistic health, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I'm talking about intensive transformation. I'm talking about breath work and meditation and holistic diet and other deep experiential therapies that I was doing, and yoga, and you know, and so and more, and so it helped to kick that smoker out of my life, the smoker part of me. And you know, I think it's still there. It's very much dissolved. It's very much dissolved because some, you know, there's still an aspect of that I process of, wow, it's interesting desire, right? The desire to inhale smoke, because it doesn't seem like it's a naturalistic type of thing. Like it doesn't seem like something that you're born with, the need to inhale smoke. And yet so many of us do it. So many of us do it. And so I think that this disease model of addiction that we have, and this disease model is as helpful as the 12 steps has been. This disease model in medicine as well in our society could be harmful to us. Our technologies and our strategies have taken us up to a point, but they could be harmful to our further evolution and maturity. Because once you quit the substance, then what? And if you look always at something as a pathology, maybe you don't see the potential for growth. When I got COVID, when I got Lyme, I had to reorganize myself around what had happened, to evolve to a different state of well-being. I had to create wellness. Nobody was going to come to save me, to cure my disease. This is a different model. I don't cure diseases. I help you activate your innate vital energies, your innate vital capacities for transformation and growth. Not that the disease model doesn't have something to contribute to us, because of that idea, not only of the amazing 12 steps, but the idea that step one, you're powerless over the addiction, which in the disease model, you're saying that it's a disease, but you're powerless over it and you can't go back to it, because like if I smoked, then, you know, I don't know what, you know, I would be back to smoking. I would be in that loop, that habit, that addiction. But I don't know that it's a disease, or that it's helpful to frame it that way, Or if it is framed as a disease, then maybe it's helpful to frame our understanding of what disease is, because we're addicted to thinking that we can fix everything and we can't. And a disease is something that we reorganize our life in order to create wellness when it happens. And it can be actually a catalyst. It can be something that came into our life. So maybe our unconscious created that disease in the first place in order to grow. I mean, you can't go back. You already did the addiction. I've already had my share of smoking for my entire life. I can't go back and undo that. What I can do is see how it was part of my psychospiritual growth that I made those mistakes. So I hope that's helpful. I think that the disease model has a lot to offer. It's just I don't strictly adhere to it. And I think that the transpersonal humanistic model of psychology, which you'll continually hear me allude to in the videos, also has a lot to offer. And it's more of an open-ended framework. And it allows more for things like psychedelic medicines, which don't fit very well within the disease model of addiction. So at least in its current framework, and which wasn't invented by healthcare practitioners, as I mentioned. By the way, comment below if you've got thoughts about all this, whatever they are. I'd love to hear from you, and reach out to me in Messenger if your thoughts are private. That's fine too. Or find me through the links on my website, on my Linktree, and reach out. I'd love to chat. But comment if you're watching where you're coming from, and if you're watching on the replay, #replay. But yeah, so the addiction model that has a lot to offer, but I think there's something more. The disease model of addiction has a lot to offer, rather. And I think for me, that fits within what I think to be a more expansive model of the psyche. And so, like I say, I hope that's helpful, and feel free to reach out to me, and I will see you on the next video. Aloha.